Hello and welcome into another edition of the PHNXDbacks podcast right here on PHNX. My name is Derek Montilla, of course, formerly known as your mayor of PHNX, currently known as your mayor of Wrigley Field. Very excited to be back. And of course, very excited to be here with my baseball loving brothers. First, I am joined, of course, by the vice mayor. He still keeps those rights. And your thunderstick, it's Jesse Friedman.
Derek, you're back. You survived.
I did, and I came back with my voice this time, which is much nicer than my last trip. But they're still very, very tired, Jesse. I did not drink enough water, as you asked me earlier. I did not call you enough.
What a hypocrite, Derek.
I am. I really am. I am. That's one thing I definitely can confirm I am. But also joining us and looking just splendid in this 4K view that we have of him, it's Mr. Electric, Shawn. What is happening, sir?
Yo, you gotta love a show where you get a little bit of news minutes before.
Yeah. Normally this kind of thing happens usually 10 minutes after we wrap. So very thankful to actually get some news. And of course, that news being that the Arizona Diamondbacks have optioned Josh Rojas to AAA Reno, and they have recalled Alek Thomas, who has been killing it offensively right now in Reno, and great to see Alek Thomas back, especially with his defense. Not so great to see Josh Rojas sent down, especially considering that he quote tweeted us wanting to also be back to early April Josh Rojas, just like we wanted him to be back to. But what are your guys' thoughts on this move? Jesse, I'll start with you.
Yeah, something we've kind of wondered about for a while, right? I've been wondering for a while how long the leash really is with Josh Rojas. I mean, there comes a point where, you know, when you're playing third base, when that's your role on the team, that's a position that you need offense from. And the Diamondbacks have been rolling with 3 third basemen on this roster for a while. And it sort of worked. They've been able to use the DH spot to cycle guys in and out. But at a certain point, Josh Rojas just wasn't really in the lineup all that much. And I think the D-backs are better served sending him down, trying to get him right, trying to get him to, you know, figure some things out, getting regular playing time than playing in what has really turned into a part-time role, not even a platoon role at this point, just sort of a part-time role in the majors. As far as Alek Thomas is concerned, I talked with Joe Mather, the Diamondbacks hitting coach, the other day about what he's heard about Alek Thomas down in Reno, what the D-backs are looking to see before they bring him up. And it did sort of sound like this decision was not far away. Joe Mather sounded very impressed with what he's seen. We know that Alek has made some adjustments. We talked about the leg kick. The D-backs tried having him remove the leg kick. I don't believe that change stuck. We'll kind of see what it looks like when he gets back up here, but he did work on some weight transfer stuff. So there is some mechanical changes that he made there that seem to be paying dividends in AAA. So yeah, it sounded like this was a move that the D-backs were close to making. Joe Mather said that Alek Thomas is putting pressure on decision makers to get him back up here, and that's the decision that the Diamondbacks made.
Shawn, it sounds like, I mean, honestly, we've seen this with the Arizona Diamondbacks players. We just saw it with Alek Thomas, right? Where they can't get right at the major league level. And honestly, at a major league level, sometimes you can't try to work on things like what Jesse's talking about with the leg kick and just different mechanics, because you're doing it at the cost of the team succeeding, right? With the team being in the position that they're in, the send down, like, optioning these guys down to Reno so that they can work on this stuff and not ride the bench without getting playing time seems to be the right move.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly was my first thought. You look at it with Jake McCarthy, right? He obviously struggled for a little bit, got sent down, came back, and he has been pretty damn good since then, right? And you
wore the vest while I was gone, right? I saw him in the vest.
Yeah, right. So you kind of hope that is like, I guess, a model that can be replicated with Alek Thomas and now with Josh Rojas. And so far you have like the numbers to back it up. Like we were kind of talking about, Alek Thomas has looked amazing in AAA recently. So you have to hope that transfers to the major leagues again, like it did with McCarthy. And if it does, and if it happens with Rojas, then the team is in pretty damn good shape. And it's nice to know you have that little bit of a fallback, that system you can send guys through. That's going to get them back to playing at a high level in the majors, not just in Reno.
we talked about them having like roster issues, but good roster issues where they don't know who they're going to send down and what moves they're going to make because guys tend to be playing well all at the same time. They don't seem to have a lot of good options all the time. But yeah, you're right. Like this seems to be right now the way that it's working the best to get these guys that are still valuable to the team that they still need in order for this team to be successful. Right. But they're not doing it at the cost of an at bat every 9 guys, right? And in some cases, that's kind of what it felt like with some of these guys. It's what it still feels like with a couple of guys on the roster. So I mean, we might not just see just Josh Rojas. The thing is, not everybody has the options left, and that's a big thing to keep an eye on, depending on what the Diamondbacks do at the trade deadline and maybe some other moves that they make here. But one move that we know that they have to make is to do something to reinforce the starting pitching rotation. Even though the Diamondbacks take 2 out of 3 from the Guardians while I was out, they did get blown out on Sunday with Zach Davies on the mound. And I mean, we're talking 3 2/3, 9 hits, 9 runs, 8 earned, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts, just a complete disaster of an outing.
The Guardians are not a good offensive team either. I think when the Phillies were out there and the Phillies were, one of the hottest teams in baseball coming in, you could kind of understand when Davies struggled against that team.
Still are, by the way, after they played the Diamondbacks, they're still on that roll,
Yeah. The Phillies have continued to really run over the National League in a lot of their recent games. The Guardians have played better baseball of late, but it's still kind of Jose Ramirez, Josh Naylor to some degree, and then everyone else. This offense is not at all what it was last year, and really doesn't compare with the Phillies offense at all in my mind. So yeah, I mean, the reality is the last 2 times that Zach Davies has pitched, Josh Rojas has pitched the 9th inning. And that doesn't bode well, right, for your future in the rotation. And we talked about this a little bit on Twitter and had a number of people sound off. There comes a point when you have to ask the question: are the Diamondbacks not just looking for one starter at the trade deadline? Do they have to go out and make multiple moves in order to really stay in this thing? Obviously, they're 43-29. Their record is still really good. They're still in a really good spot. They've managed to win a lot of these games despite, what the starting pitchers have not been able to do for them. But there comes a point down the stretch when you feel like those kind of things catch up to you, and you really can't afford to have any more games like what happened with Zach Davies. There's a difference between 4 2/3, 3 runs, or 5 1/3, 4 runs, or whatever it is, and what Davies has given you the last 2 times out. He really hasn't given you much of a chance to win the game.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I think coming into the season, I also had some questions about who Zach Davies would be. We talked a lot about, when he first came back, that you kind of feel like what you're getting. You feel like he's a steadying presence in the rotation. But there's also this flip side where if you look at Zach Davies' peripherals from a year ago, he wasn't actually that good. His FIP, I believe, was just shy of 5. If you look at some of those peripheral numbers, they paint a picture of a pretty well below average starting pitcher. And, we've really seen that the last couple times out.
You do bring up, though, that we got to see Josh Rojas, so that's a benefit when it comes to Zach.
He was nasty, man. He was nasty yesterday.
Now who's next?
Yeah, who's coming out of the pen now?
Who's coming out of the pen?
Yeah, I mean, Rojas, let's take a look at that line. 1 innings pitched, 1 hit, 0 runs, 1 walk, 1 strikeout, and, he lowered his ERA to 18. Like, what more can you ask for from a guy that's going to give you such depth? When we talk about Josh Rojas truly being a utility player, he can play anywhere. And that's what the Diamondbacks lose with Josh Rojas getting sent down. But let's take a look at the numbers for this series with the Guardians, because once again, even though the Diamondbacks take 2 out of 3, it's a not the friendliest outcome or result thanks to that blowout in Game 3.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those series where it really felt like they had a sweep like in their hands up until the start of that last game. And I mean, it's really hard to sweep teams in Major League Baseball regardless of who it is, right? So you I guess they were bound to have a bad game, but the fact that it was as bad as it was is obviously a much tougher pill to swallow. And that third number right there with the batting average with runners in scoring position, like it's again like them struggling to drive in runners that are in scoring position is it is a hole that kind of keeps popping up with this this lineup, and you hate to see it kind of rear its ugly head again against a team that's not all that good.
Yeah. 5 dingers though. I like that.
Yeah.
Like a little home run action, Jesse.
Three of them came in one inning, right? That was that was the 8th inning the other night. So yeah, there's kind of been this narrative that the Diamondbacks don't hit that many home runs. And that, I mean, the numbers don't really tell that story. They've kind of been right in the middle of the league in that regard the entire season. So that 6-3 win on Saturday was really, I think that was a fun night at the ballpark for a lot of people. The answerbacks doing their thing, coming back in the 8th inning and really taking over that game. That was a nice win. And yeah, on the whole, the D-backs took 2 out of 3 from the Guardians, which is good, right? I mean, that's a good result at the end of the day. But you can definitely see that the holes on this roster are making themselves very clear in recent days. It's like, okay, you absolutely need a starting pitcher at the trade deadline. If the Diamondbacks don't get one starting pitcher at the trade deadline, that feels pretty egregious at this point, as long as they're still, in the playoff mix as they are right now. At this point, it's so clear that I don't think the Diamondbacks even have a choice in that regard.
A couple of things I wanted to bring up, and Shawn kind of reminded me of this when he said that this should have been a sweep. We've said that a lot about some of these series that the Diamondbacks have won, and rightfully so. Like, I'm not going to say that you shouldn't say that they should have swept a team that they kind of had this, things were rolling well against in the first 2 games. But like, are we getting to a point where we're expecting too much? Like, I don't know. I mean, obviously the expectations have changed drastically with this team, but it feels like, and especially when they lose in the final game of the series, they win the first 2, and like this, it feels like we're still left with this, heaping mound of disappointment, despite the fact that the Diamondbacks won yet another series, and they continue to have a decent lead. I mean, we're a couple of days away from the Dodgers possibly being 3rd in the National League West.
They're already 3rd in the National
League. Are they there?
West,
I haven't kept up on the standings.
Giants.
The Giants did some work in Dodger Stadium over the weekend.
They're half a game over the Dodgers. That's just incredible to me. And I mean, honestly, if you can't look at that and think that this is wide open this season for this team, then that's crazy. But unfortunately, in baseball, the Diamondbacks aren't the only team that feel this thing is wide open for. There are a lot of teams that feel that it's still wide open, which is gonna be what makes the trade deadline so difficult to navigate and so difficult for the Diamondbacks to get that return. I know we've talked about it a couple of times, Jesse, but you've said it. Like, the Diamondbacks don't just need one starting pitcher at the trade deadline; they need 2. I mean, that might be a bit drastic, but that's what it feels like at this point when we see what is occurring right now with the starting rotation.
Yeah, and there's also this element to me as far as the starting rotation is concerned, where, not only does it feel like you really have to make these moves, but if you do, the margin by which you are improving the team is really significant, right? For some teams, they make an upgrade at the trade deadline. You're replacing a pretty good player with an even better player. The Diamondbacks are in position right now to be replacing guys who probably shouldn't be in a major league rotation with potentially like a Marcus Stroman, right? Like, that is an enormous amount of improvement. And if the D-backs are able to find a way to do that twice, which I'm not so sure about, if I'm a Diamondbacks fan, I'm probably still just kind of looking for one starting pitcher at the deadline. Getting 2, given how much, the supply and demand situation that we're expecting, getting 2 might be impossible, frankly. But even if you get 1, that's a really big improvement over what the Diamondbacks have, and the D-backs have a chance to improve more by what they do at the deadline than that margin for some other teams.
And really what it comes down to is, I know in the playoffs they're going to need to be deeper, but how deep do they really need to be if they have 3 quality starting pitchers like Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, and someone they potentially trade for as part of this rotation. Like that just changes things significantly. Even if they don't even if they don't get that fourth starter, even if they are not able to shore up the back end of their rotation, it still feels like with the way this team is playing and a very strong, like at least 3 starting pitchers, that this team could very much do something that many could be considered to be extraordinary. I don't know. The Phillies have me thinking crazy things, not just because of the way they whooped us, but also because of what they did last year. It's hard not to take notice of what the Phillies did, what kind of season they had, and then what kind of playoff run they ended up being able to put together, right? So there's a lot of teams that are right there on the bubble that probably look at that Phillies team from last year and think, hey, we might still be able to be that. So that, again, is what is going to make that trade deadline so difficult to navigate. But one thing that is not difficult to navigate is who is our king snake for this series, because it was absolutely Walker, single, double, triple Walker. And Jesse, I noticed in one of your tweets you left a Walker out. So I need you to tighten that shit up when I'm gone. But Christian Walker here, just outstanding. 545 batting average in the 3 games, 2 of the Diamondbacks' 5 dingers in the series, 6 RBI. Walk is back, it feels like.
Yeah, full disclosure on that. I'm literally like sitting in the Chase Field press box, like singing the Burger King song to myself.
Is it 4 Whoppers or is it 3 Whoppers?
I had that moment the other day where I realized it was 4 instead of 3, and I recognized the egregious mistake that I made. But yeah, Christian Walker is, it felt like it was kind of his turn to sort of, take over this lineup a little bit, to be the guy that the Diamondbacks offense can lean on. And he was absolutely that in this series. He's absolutely risen to that occasion and continues to be one of the better, more underrated first basemen in the game.
And I like how you put it about his turn, because it does feel like that with this lineup, right? Like it does feel like these guys just kind of tag in and out as far as who's going to be the hero, which again kind of answers that question at times, like how the hell did this team win this many games?
Yeah, I mean, it's good to see, and it's funny. Look, a little tinfoil hat theory. You heard?
Oh, here we go.
You heard Hazen talk about how this team needed a power bat, right? And then all of a sudden, Christian Walker starts turning up.
He heard it.
More of a power
Do
bat.
your job
is that not me? Am I not this team's power bat? Right?
I thought I was the power. Am I not the power bat?
Yeah,
I heard Derek say I'm just a good hitter now.
Yeah. But he's been amazing recently. I think Bally's tweeted out it was something like 12 or 13 extra base hits over his last 15 games. Like he has been, like you said, the guy. Like seems like this team has guys tagging in and out, and he's tagged in recently. He's been what this offense has needed in a lot of big moments, it seems like. And that's a little more reminiscent of what he was last year. And so that's always, I guess, really good to see.
Yeah. We need last year Christian Walk back, but just not without the lack of luck, like the one he was hitting 110 exit velo right into the shortstop's glove. But someone else, of course, that's been really good is our very own MVP candidate, our very own Rookie of the Year candidate, Corbin Carroll. Jesse has an amazing article on Corbin Carroll's first 100 games, and I can't believe this guy is real, Jesse. I just still can't.
It's unbelievable. I was, racking my brain at 3 a.m. the other night trying to figure out, like, how do I put in perspective what Corbin Carroll has accomplished in his first 100 games as a big leaguer. And there's some eye-opening stats in that article that I wrote. His 937 OPS over his first 100 games is the highest in Diamondbacks history. There was one player, Rubiel Durazo, who's actually
I love Rubiel Durazo. Yes, I love
Durazo was really good.
He was really good.
I think his was 933 over his first 100 games. So those two are really close. Goldie was in the 840, 850 range, something like that. Corbin Carroll, as I wrote, the Diamondbacks have lacked a true consistent superstar since Paul Goldschmidt left this organization. There's been a hole there, right? And I know some people would say Ketel Marte, he kind of at least looked like that guy. You could make a case that in 2019 he was that guy. He finished 4th in MVP voting.
Yeah.
But he hasn't been that guy consistently, right? In order to really be a superstar in this league, it's not about just having one star level season. It's about stringing them together and becoming a force, becoming the face of the franchise. Corbin Carroll it's so abundantly clear. And I don't want to say he is that already, because it has only been 100 games, but he couldn't really have done anything more over these first 100 games to make a statement to this organization and to its fan base. I am that guy. I am the guy who's going to come in here, and I am going to be your star player for, he's under team control through 2031. And as I said the other day on the show, if you're a fan of this team, like, you should probably own this guy's jersey. Like, you should probably become an enormous Corbin Carroll fan, because not only is he an amazing, intelligent person off the field, but he's an extremely good baseball player. And what he's accomplished in his first 100 games is already historic.
As Michael points out in the chat, he said batting stance guy even did his Corbin Carroll. When batting stance guy is doing your batting stance, like, you're a superstar. But when we talk about superstar, this just still blows my mind. Let's take a look at Corbin Carroll in the National League MVP race with Ronald Acuna, which, of course, is a very, very good baseball player, Jesse. And I am very excited that we are even making this comparison. To even have this graphic in front of me right now kind of melts my brain.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. I don't know if Shawn wants to weigh in on this race and where this whole thing might be headed, but yeah, I mean, we were making the Rookie of the Year graphic, right? This graphic was made with the intent of comparing Corbin Carroll with his biggest Rookie of the Year competitor.
Correct.
We were kind of playing the game with Elly De La Cruz there for a while, but at this point, Corbin Carroll is so far ahead of any competition in the Rookie of the Year race that this comparison is more fitting at this point.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. Like, Ronald Acuna is clearly at the favorite for this award at this point. Like,
absolutely, yeah, he definitely has.
Stats are in total better than Corbin Carroll's, but like, it's ridiculous we're even talking about this. Like, that's what I was going to say earlier, is like, I know Jesse and I last week were talking about the potential of a sweep, an award sweep, and this is obviously the hardest one, but like,
yeah,
I think we're losing sight of the fact that, like, he is even like, if
we're even having this discussion,
part of the conversation, and
right.
Corbin Carroll was just like the runaway for Rookie of the Year, like, that would be a crazy story in and of itself. The fact that, like you kind of said, we're even making this comparison is ridiculous. And this is still a very long season, right? Like, there's nothing to say that on one hand that Corbin Carroll doesn't eventually look like a rookie, which, as I said last week, he has yet to really do outside of the kind of coming back from the injury portion. And alternately, there's nothing to say that Ronald Acuna doesn't slump, or not that I knock on wood, he's a guy that's dealt with injury before, right? So there's nothing to say that Ronald Acuna continues this all year.
Right.
So
right. Like, he's in it. He's in the race. Like, he's not leading it right now, but he's there. And I mean,
firmly in it. Yeah, exactly.
He's definitely in the top 3 as far as your consideration for MVP candidates. I think what then kind of happens is, what's the directions of the team? Like, what direction does the team go? What direction do the Diamondbacks go? If the Diamondbacks continue to win and Corbin Carroll continues to be a major driving force behind that, that might be something that, even if the numbers kind of swing in Acuna's favor for a couple of categories, that still might be, like, between that and the fact he's a rookie and he's doing it this year, all of that might swing in the favor of Corbin Carroll when you put all of their factors side by side.
That's a great point. That's a really good point. I mean, a lot of people like those narrative games, right? The Braves without Ronald Acuna would still be a really good baseball team.
Yes.
The Diamondbacks without Corbin Carroll.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a little scary to think about where they would be without what he's given them this year.
Right.
Yeah,
right. So,
it's human beings.
And that's what it's about, right? The most valuable player, right? So, and I mean, we talked about winning being a part of that, but sorry to cut you off, Shawn. Go ahead.
No. It's just, I feel like we always forget. It's just human beings that are making these decisions at the end of the day. Right. And we can look at numbers as much as we want, but, like, human beings are the ones that have to decipher how important those numbers are, and it's subjective at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
And it's hard not to be like, man, we have the opportunity to make history here. Like and I'm not saying like it's the best thing, but factors like, again, like how good of a story this would be and stuff have to creep into people's minds when they're making these decisions, right? So it's not like you're completely free of that, of being biased when you really take a look at that. And then Michael points out, if you can find his jersey in the team store, LOL. I don't like that. Maybe you got to make a custom one. Sometimes you got to do that. I did that with my Durant jersey for the Suns. So I don't know, but things are going good. Speaking of the Suns here in the Valley and the Diamondbacks, hopefully the Diamondbacks can get some of that good trade mojo that the Suns just kind of had going on. But
I think those teams were definitely in talks with each other, right? D-backs were just having a terrible, terrible day at the ballpark in front of 42,000 fans on Father's Day. So they were just begging the Suns, like, if you're gonna make a trade, you better make it right now. Save our news cycle.
Yeah, we just want to escape without anybody noticing us. They're like, say less, fam. I got you. But, speaking of saying less, say less about where you need to go. Bet your hard-earned money on sports. Check out the BetMGM Sportsbook app. They have a wonderful game that we've been talking about. It's their Swing for the Fences promotion. All you got to do is log into the Sportsbook app, play the BetMGM MLB free-to-play game from May 27th through September 7th. You just are a batter, and you just pick an area of the strike zone where you're swinging. Depending on the area of the strike zone you pick, you will either single, double, triple, or homer. And if you're Shawn, you never fly out. But
I could pop out twice this weekend.
See, yeah,
but I'm back. I got a double today. Got a little bet insurance token, so
let's go. You receive that prize associated with the type of hit, and prizing must be used on MLB and expires in 24 hours. So don't miss out on that. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM app, use bonus code PHNX. There's a few different offers depending on where you live. For our Arizona audience, you will get up to $100 in bonus bets on your first wager with BetMGM. Of course, again, make sure you use bonus code PHNX in order to get that free bets. And check out the show notes for full details. But listen to Shane Diefenbach talk about the disclaimer.
Disclaimer, 21 plus to wager. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in Washington, D.C., Mississippi, Nevada, New York, and Ontario. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369, New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, Arizona. 1-800-522-4700, Kansas, Nevada. 1-800-327-5050, Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF, Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help, Michigan.
Well, if you guys are here in the PHNX Sports YouTube channel right now watching us live, we appreciate you being here. Make sure to sign up for notifications. That way you don't miss when any of our shows go live. Leave us a little thumbs up. We always appreciate that feedback. And we also love your feedback if you're listening on audio podcast side. Subscribe there if you haven't done so already and leave us a review. Again, love that feedback. Want to know how we can make this show better. I was out in Chicago at Wrigley Field. I'm going to talk about it in a little bit. But, man, I want to build this community, you guys. I mean, I know it's going to take like 100+ years. I get it, but I'm excited about what we can make Arizona baseball like here. And speaking of that, make sure to get a diehard membership. It's the best membership that you can get as an Arizona baseball fan. Of course, not only do you get free merchandise from PHNXLocker.com every year you're a member, you also get 20% off all future purchases. You get wonderful supplies from our partners, like free pizza from Mountain Mike's Pizza, $50 gift certificate upon signing up. You also get free Dobson Ranch card, which will get you all sorts of wonderful benefits if you're a golfer, or even if you just like going out there and relieving some stress and hitting some golf balls. So all sorts of wonderful things for you to have as a diehard member, including discounts with our partners, invites to events, access to our members only Discord, and of course access to Jesse's newsletter Full Count, where you can read everything Jesse has to talk about the Arizona Diamondbacks. So make sure to sign up for a diehard membership today. Well, it is Monday. I am on 1 hour of sleep, so I'm going to push through this and I'm going to try to make it without dying. But I don't care what day I don't care how tired I am. It's Monday. Every week on this show is Shark Week, regardless of how tired I am. Every day on the show is Earth Day. And every Monday we go to the mailbag. Damon, let's go.
My mailbox, always something interesting in my mailbox. I try to get to everything in my mailbox. And then once in a while, there's a letter that makes me go, wow, wow, my mailbox.
Okay, I'm sick of that guy's voice. I spent the entire weekend with that man, so I've had enough of his voice. But Damon, let's go to the mailbag. What do we got for our first question? Brian Bobbitt asks, if Davies looks like he has his last couple of starts, how long of a leash will they give him? And I was going to get into this earlier, but I knew we had this question, so I wanted to let you guys give me your thoughts. Zach Davies continues to struggle. How many more starts do you give him, Jesse?
I don't think the leash it can be particularly long. I think a lot of it depends on his next start. If Zach Davies goes out there and has another start where they're calling on a position player to pitch the 9th inning, I don't know. I think there maybe is a scenario where Zach Davies makes one more and then they feel the need to make some sort of a move. When you have a guy who makes 3 straight uncompetitive starts like that, in the middle of a playoff race, I think that case would have some weight to it. A lot, of course, depends on the alternative, on what the Diamondbacks would do instead. And so it's almost like I think the leash on both Ryan Nelson and Zach Davies probably has less to do with how they pitch and more to do with how Brandon Pfaadt pitches. If Brandon Pfaadt dominates, he pitched yesterday. He was okay.
You're skipping ahead. We got another question about Brandon Pfaadt. Don't worry about that.
I'll stop there. But yeah, suffice
bring it back here in a second.
It doesn't. Yeah, it's not all about how Zach Davies and Ryan Nelson pitch. A lot of it has to do with the contingency plan.
I think that's fair enough. Shawn, would you agree?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was going to say. Is I think it really just depends on what the alternative is.
Options. What options do you have?
His leash is as long as they don't have an option, he's going to be up here, I think. But even then, it's not like we're that far from this team actually making options or making moves if they do plan on making moves for starters at the trade deadline. So it's hard to believe that his leash is very long if he has another bad start. But I mean, the reality of a lot of the guys on this team is that every time that they get close to thinking you need to cut them or waive them or send them down or whatever it is, they end up having some kind of big performance. And we know that every guy in this rotation is capable of having a good performance. So who knows, right? Like I think it's just as likely that he has a decent performance in this game that it is he has a bad one, not necessarily because he's a great pitcher, just because that just seems to be how this season goes.
Yeah. Well, your job is on the line. You start to know it, and there's 2 directions you go. You feel the pressure and you buckle, or you kind of step up and you give yourself some more time. Like we've seen, we've kind of joked about that with Pavin and his timely hits, right? But and even when discussing this, we're talking about Zach Davies going out there and shitting the bed in his next start and having like this kind of start. What happens if it's just kind of a mediocre start? What if it's 5 innings and he gives up 5 earned and the Diamondbacks are in it, or they maybe even win it because of their offense overcoming the 5-run deficit? But like, that's not a great start, and that's still not super encouraging. It's just, again, I think you said it, Shawn. It's options, and Jesse too, right? Like it's like some of the dudes I know. They're only as loyal as their options are, if you know what I'm saying. So anyway, what else we got for questions? And now Jesse can bring his Pfaadt takes. But, William Laguna asks, should we bring back Pfaadt? And yeah, obviously, a big part of that, a big caveat to that is, well, is Brandon Pfaadt going to be able to pitch well at a major league level at this point in his career? I don't think he's not going to be a very valuable, good pitcher at some point. I just don't know if they have to go to him kind of an emergency break glass situation, if he's going to be able to come up to the major leagues and do much better than what you're getting out of Ryan Nelson.
Yeah, Pfaadt gave up 3 homers in his start yesterday. The final numbers were pretty good. 6 innings, only 3 earned runs. I think he gave up 5 runs total, but only 3 were earned. So he's looked better. His last 2 starts have definitely been better. And, homers in Reno, you always take for, with a grain of salt because of the hitting environment there. I haven't had a chance to go back and look at the batted ball data, but usually when a guy gives up 3 homers in Reno, at least one of those was, a Reno PCL homer and probably wouldn't have gone over the fence. And
the guy sneezed while hitting the ball and it went for a dinger.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Bang, oh, gone. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think to what you guys were talking about earlier, I also want to add that I think the leash for Nelson is probably shorter than the leash for Davies, just because like Zach Davies is a free agent signing, right? The D-backs aren't sending down Zach Davies, I don't think. If you decide that Zach Davies, is not fit for your rotation, you kind of just have to move on from him entirely. And I don't know if the Diamondbacks are. I think it's going to take them a while to get to that point. Whereas with Ryan Nelson, it's a really easy roster move to make. So even if Davies is maybe even struggling more, I think the leash there might be a little longer.
All right. Yeah. What else we got? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have something, Shawn, to add?
No. He summed it up, and I feel like it is. I think all of the pitching moves are kind of tied together, right? Like, you can. I feel like it's just a matter. As far as Davies is concerned, it's a matter of him getting forced out. And yeah, I agree with Jesse that Nelson's leash is probably a little bit shorter in that regard.
It's kind of like what we talked about Evan Longoria for a while there when he struggled, and some of these other guys, right? Like, there's a difficult decision. So sometimes even if a younger player might be playing slightly better or might be offering slightly more, like Ryan Nelson is doing better than Davies, but I think Jesse's point is astute. I think it's because Brian Nelson right now, they have that option with him to still send him down, and that still keeps him in the organization. Also, like what we talked about earlier with Alek Thomas and some of the hitters going down to work on stuff, we've seen an improvement when guys go down to Reno and work on things. They're able to come back up and be better than they were. Zach Davies just doesn't have that option. He doesn't have that opportunity. So it's going to be a much more difficult decision to part ways with him. However, this is a team that cut Madison Bumgarner, so let's not even act for a moment like they are above making that kind of decision.
But it took them a while, Derek.
It did take them a while.
Fans endured quite a bit before they obviously the money there
quite a bit. Jesse, they endured April. And maybe like the first
they endured last season too. Right. I mean, they've endured quite a bit, but the money is obviously enormously different, right? Zach Davies is making $4 million this year. Madison Bumgarner, you're talking about eating, like $40 million going into next season. So
you just know that they're not going to mess around. Like they have no problem. If they did that, they have no problem, cutting Zach Davies. And obviously, again, when you talk about Bumgarner in last year, what are we talking about, Jesse? We're talking about the options that the organization had, and they didn't have many options when it came to guys going out there on the mound and starting. But shout out to Nicholas Gruters in the chat for the super chat, $5 super chat. He said, I don't think it can be understated what the defense of Alek, McCarthy, and Carroll out there means to the pitching as well. Keep Pavin out of right. That I didn't even get a chance to bring that up earlier with Alek Thomas, but man, I mean, it's great to have Alek Thomas right at the dish, and that's going to be great for this team if he can continue to do what he's doing in Reno at a major league level. But I just can't wait for his defense to be back. Even Jake McCarthy, who is arguably one of the better outfielders that the Diamondbacks currently have on the major league roster, has struggled at times in center field, whereas Alek Thomas just smoothly made that look easy. And I miss him out there. So good to see Alek Thomas back. What else we got, Damon? Nicholas asks, what does Rojas need to work on most in order to keep Davies' spot in the rotation? That's really what the big question here is. We're not we know Josh Rojas got sent down because of the information today. Obviously, some of these questions they're going to not make a lot of sense now that Rojas is gone. But no, I like this question being in there still because I think that's what Rojas goes down in the minor leagues and works on. Forget third base, forget hitting. I think Rojas needs to go work on his pitch selection and, just adding a little bit of velo to that curveball, the 44-mile-an-hour curveball.
Well, he had it was like a 67, 68 mile an hour curveball yesterday that struck out Bo Naylor with.
He just needs to be stretched out, Jesse. He just needs to be stretched out.
Yeah, the D-backs definitely. Yeah, if you think that they sent him down to work on his swing, I mean, no, they clearly sent him down. They sent him down to work on his fastball command and to improve his location on his curveball. And maybe perfect the Johnny Cueto shimmy just a little bit more than he already has. Yeah. So
just work on not being off balance when you go to pitch the ball. Just
any chance of adding another pitch.
Yeah.
Diversify.
Like a slurve. I want to slurve.
Yeah, he's gonna come back with a fork ball or something. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Knuckle curve. Michael says Josh Rotani, and that's what we're calling him from now on. That's it. And speaking of Michael, next question comes from Michael. Michael, let's see your question. He says, what happens first? Corbin Carroll gets to 25 steals or Josh Rojas hits a home run? This is interesting because now there's an interesting wrinkle to this question.
Oh,
does Josh Rojas hit a home run in Reno? Or does Corbin Carroll get to 25 steals first, right? Like, this just got more interesting. Worse pitching, different environment. I think Rojas like has 5 dingers in like the next 2 weeks. We'll see.
Yeah,
that's what I'm predicting.
My initial reaction was that Carroll's going to have a little bit of a head start, I guess, now. But if we're including the home runs of Reno, I'm giving it to Rojas. I think he gets one soon. I'm with you.
Yeah, the hitter-friendly environment there. Absolutely.
Right?
That's the best.
Changes everything.
That's the best thing that could have happened. My answer, honestly, coming into the show before the roster move was made, I was making the assumption we were talking about in the big leagues. And my answer was going to be that I think Corbin Carroll gets to 25 stolen bases first, because I don't think that Josh Rojas is going to be on this roster for very much longer. And obviously we got that news today.
You did that to him. Corbin Carroll, by the way, 15 dingers this year himself. So well on his way to his 20-40 season, maybe his 30-40 season, maybe his 40-40 season. Who knows? We'll see what happens. I'm getting crazy now, but that's also because, like I said, I'm tired and I'm hungry. And I need some pizza. I wanted pizza bad. My wife made me a sandwich, and it's just it's dying in my living room right now, waiting for me to finish the show. But that's because I wanted pizza, and I'm going to maybe be a brat about it and see if I can get my way. I will be ordering pizza from Mountain Mike's, and you should too, because Mountain Mike's has a wonderfully gigantic pizza when you are absolutely starving. 20-inch pepperoni pizza that'll feed an entire army and feed your family. They also have their locations which have a wonderful lunch buffet. So if you're looking for a place to stop, have a good lunch that's going to fill you up and have lots of options, check out Mountain Mike's. Of course, head over to mountainmikespizza.com or to their Mesa, Chandler, or Tucson locations to place your next order. And reminder, new diehards get that $50 voucher upon signing up. So if you haven't signed up for a diehard membership, do that right now and then go get yourself some pizza. Before we go to our MOR Mailbag Monday questions, we have to thank our friends over at MOR Furniture for making Jesse their official spokesperson of Chase Lounges at MOR, and also for offering a wide variety of furniture. You need a new recliner. Again, Father's Day has passed, but some of you didn't get your dad a good gift. Like, go back that up. Go get your dad that coffee table he wanted. Or, you know what, even maybe like some stools for like his bar area, whatever you need to get your loved ones. Check out morefurniture.com. They will deliver the furniture with their white glove delivery service and set it up for you so you don't have to lift a finger. Save big on the best furniture in the valley when you head to morefurniture.com. Now we got some more Mailbag Monday questions. Damon, what else we got? Travis Moore asks, trying again, hoping this gets answered on the mailbag, and I'm guessing he has tried to get us to answer that on Twitter, and now he's like, screw you guys, answer it on the show. And he says, define what you mean by a pitcher's stuff. And I like this question because I think we use this a lot, and like, yeah, there are some people who I don't think have any clue what we mean when we say pitcher's stuff. He said, I admittedly am only making guesses at what it means when you guys start talking about a guy having his best stuff on any given day. I think that transfers over to like saying a guy has good stuff, but maybe the results aren't there. We've said that, it's almost a cliche around here, but Jesse, stuff. Let's talk about stuff and what you mean by that. And especially let's take, for example, like Zach Gallen, right? When we say Zach Gallen doesn't have his best stuff, we even say he doesn't have a best feel for some of his pitches. What do we mean by that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like stuff, movement. These are all words that I don't know if we really define like we should, and people don't really know what we're talking about.
What the hell do you mean? What's stuff? It's just stuff. It's stuff.
Yeah,
that's why we use the word stuff.
Admittedly, I do think there's a little bit of gray area there, but yeah, when I'm talking about stuff, I'm specifically talking about swing and miss. That's what I have in mind.
Yes.
So yeah, and some, that's why some pitchers have better stuff than other pitchers. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're better pitchers, though.
Yeah.
So for
doesn't
example,
mean they're hitting the strike zone more. It doesn't mean, it just means that when batters are up there, they are absolutely perplexed at times by the pitches these guys are throwing.
Right. So yeah, some pitchers have incredible stuff, and yet they might not have a whole lot of success because they can't command it. So like an example of that would be Carlos Vargas, right? Diamondbacks pitcher that they acquired from the Guardians in a trade over the offseason. If you saw him pitch in spring training or early in the season when he was on the big league roster, Carlos Vargas, there's over 100 miles an hour. He throws a slider that I think is maybe identified as a cutter in the low 90s. His stuff is insane, right? It's really hard to hit when he's throwing it in the right places. But the reason he's not effective is because he's not able to command his stuff very well. So stuff is sort of like a measure of like nastiness, right? It's like if you throw 102, or you've got some insane ride on your fastball, or like Zach Gallen's curveball is an insane pitch. The amount of movement really that pitch has. Yeah. Whereas there are other guys who are good. Like, I don't know if I would say Merrill Kelly has insane stuff, right? He's like
a very cerebral pitcher that like outsmarts his opponent, and he knows like when to use certain pitches or when to do things. But like, like his fastball isn't that impressive in the context of fastballs versus other starting pitchers. Same thing with Zach Gallen. When we say he doesn't have his best stuff today, we're looking at like a drop in velo for his fastball average. We're looking at, wow, Zach Gallen just threw 2 pitches today. He threw the knuckle curve and fastball and nothing else. Like, that says to us that he doesn't feel comfortable throwing his other stuff because for whatever reason, he doesn't have a good feel for it that day. And again, even feel, that's kind of as vague as stuff sometimes, but feel is just like, hey, I went out there and I started throwing my changeup during warmups and I couldn't fucking get it anywhere close to the strike zone, or like it wasn't moving or was going too fast. So it's like, I'm not really throwing a changeup. I'm more throwing like a slow fastball almost. And so I ain't throwing that shit today. So we're going to have to game plan around that. And like, that's when they don't have a feel for their pitches, or they don't have their best stuff on a given day sometimes.
Yeah, and feel is another word, right, that we throw around. Yeah, and I think it's hard for a lot of people to understand because in our mind, if you know how to throw a pitch, just throw the pitch.
Just throw it,
right?
like MLB The Show, right? Like, you should be able to throw it where I tell you to every single time because you're a goddamn computer. Right. Now do the thing, and it's like, no. That's not how human beings
work. We think of it as like driving a car. Like, you don't have better feel for driving a car one day or another. You just do it.
Well,
but that's not how it. Well, that's
sometimes.
Some days. But yeah, with pitches, it's not necessarily like that, right? And especially with Zach Gallen, he's a big so-called feel guy, which just means that some days it's hard to explain, but he just has a feel for a pitch. Just the way that it's coming off,
and he doesn't feel comfortable throwing it, right?
Or he doesn't, and that dictates a lot of his plan on the mound. Really, really good question.
Yeah, I love it. What else we got, Damon? Well, Chris, the answer is to this question is yes. Chris says, is Thomas getting called up? He's hitting 349 in Reno. Again, a little bit of a dated question there. Obviously, with this news happening today. Yes, we knew this was imminent. We knew that there was a good chance that he would get called up. Like, we've been watching his numbers. We've been sending out tweets about him hitting dingers in Reno. But yeah, it seemed like it was going to be hard for the Diamondbacks to avoid calling him up for much longer. And I feel like they made the right roster move in optioning Josh Rojas down so that he can try to also get right and contribute to this team.
Yeah. Shawn? Like I was saying earlier, I feel like it made sense. Rojas hopefully can go through this system that they've built now of guys kind of getting rehabbed, if you will, in Reno, and hopefully everyone comes back better baseball players.
Yeah, right. Alek's defense was enough. I don't even need him hitting 349. He could have been hitting 270, and I would have been like, get him back up here. We need his defense.
That's why I always compare him to Jackie Bradley Jr., because the Red Sox went through this a lot with him early in his career, where his glove was clearly wanted it. I think the D-backs now have it's kind of their ideal outfield with Alek in center and Corbin and McCarthy on the corners. But you just have to hope his bat is at least serviceable to just at least be a bottom of the lineup guy and have that glove out there. That's all they really need from him, bare minimum. And if he can be better than that, then that's all plus house money. At that point.
He just needs to get on base, like Jake. Him and Jake, they just need to get on base. Like, they just need 100%. To get on base, frustrate opposing defenses, and start creating that chaos on the base path. The three of them, the three outfielders, that like just their ability to find a way to do that is not really, you can't really measure it, right? So like I just need to see Alek Thomas doing that, because I feel like that's again something that generates it, like gets the offense going, it kickstarts things, and there's going to be a lot of games where they're not going to do it like they did in the series against the Guardians with the home run ball. There's going to be a lot of games where they're going to need to manufacture runs if they plan to continue to win and try to make a push for the playoffs. That's what they're going to need to do.
Yeah. I will add on Alek Thomas that I think I view Alek Thomas pretty differently than I view Jake McCarthy. Like Jake McCarthy, for pretty much his entire tenure as a prospect in this organization, was more of a fourth outfielder type, kind of a defense first, incredible speed sort of a guy, but not necessarily a guy that you would, plug into the middle of your lineup. And that perception kind of changed last year when he came up and did what he did in that final big league stint. And I think, I think his ceiling has gone up a little bit. But Alek Thomas is not really in that camp for me. Alek Thomas was a highly touted prospect, and pretty much throughout his entire time coming up through the minors, it wasn't just defense. Like Alek Thomas really hit well all the way up through the minors. He has incredible strength for his size. We've seen him hit the ball really, really hard at times. The question with him is just, is his swing a little bit flawed? Is he a little bit too, is he wired a little bit too much to hit ground balls to the right side of the infield rather than channeling that power in a more positive way? So the ceiling for Alek Thomas is a lot higher for me. I think that, as much as, it would be great if he just kind of comes up and shows a little bit of improvement, I do think there's some possibility that he comes up and, hopefully for the D-backs, looks like a different player, looks like the player that he kind of looked like he was going to be when he first came up last year.
Ban that man from the chat. Mo Schubert says send Corbin down to make a run. Yeah, see, Mo, he's coming in here with his Dodger trolls, and no, I'm not having it today. You don't get to talk about Corbin Carroll. What else we got, Damon? Next question comes from D-backs Network and says, do you see Mike Hazen sticking around much longer? Will there ever be a new ownership group of the D-backs? Would we even want a new owner? And I like this. Obviously, the Mike Hazen thing we've talked about. We really don't know how long Mike Hazen's contract is for. I feel like he's.
I think we kind of know now.
Well, yeah. Now we do.
Based on the comment that he made in that Torey Lovullo presser, I think we know that Mike Hazen is through next year. Yeah,
through the end of 2024, right? But like, he's done an excellent job, and I know that the Diamondbacks haven't achieved the ultimate goal, right? Which a lot of teams don't achieve and don't get a chance to achieve. But I feel like when you look at what Mike Hazen has done with this roster, what he's done with the minor league system, the way this team was able to rebound from the absolute disaster that was created back in those Dave Stewart, Tony La Russa days, that this really is a man that deserves to be here, and like all Diamondbacks fans should want him as GM. To be honest, he's a tremendous individual, and even with all the adversity and all of the terrible stuff that has happened to him personally in his time as GM of this team, he hasn't wavered. It's like he's barely even taken time off at times, it feels like. And I mean, there's just something about his dedication to this organization and this team that you can't help but say this is absolutely the right man for the job. And I know a lot of people are going to criticize the ownership group. I mean, that other part of that question is a whole other thing, because after seeing what like Matt Ishbia has done for the Suns and his desire to try to immediately make this team a winner, that would be exciting to have a new owner come in and be like, literally, I'm going to throw all of the money I can at the problem and try to win a championship for this team as soon as possible. What we have seen this year is other owners do that exact same thing, and those teams are below 500 right now. So it's like, it's not really something where you can sit there and say like, man, if we had new owners that actually spent money, that would be great if the owners spent money, but there's a business model, and this is a different franchise than some of those organizations. It's a different franchise than even the Suns. Suns are king in this town, right? The Diamondbacks had the kind of attendance numbers the Suns did. They absolutely would be spending the kind of money that the Suns are trying to spend, I feel like. But that's up to you, I think. I mean, I'm not going to try to sway people one way on Ken Kendrick or not. I just think that Kendrick receives a tremendous amount of unnecessary flack, considering that he really does love this team. He loves baseball and he wants to make this team a winner. It's just hard when the organization isn't, as popular as other baseball organizations are. I mean, I was going to tell this story at some point, but my experience at Wrigley Field was religious this weekend. I can't even tell you guys the feelings I felt at that stadium. I bought $28 standing room only tickets. It was the best thing I ever did with my life because we just toured the stadium, walked around, had ushers be hella nice to us and tell us where we can stand, and that like, oh, hey, over here's a great view. All you have to do is stand against the railing and you're fine to be over there. I was eating peanuts, Jesse, and I was breaking the peanuts and they were falling on the ground, and a man would walk up with a broom and a little thing and sweep it up, and then I would apologize to
Disney
him.
World.
It was like this. It was exactly like that. It was like Disneyland met baseball. Like, I'd apologize to this man and say, I'm sorry that I threw peanut shells on the ground. And he's like, this is my job to keep the concourse clean. And I was like blown away by this. Like, I probably talked to like 100 different ballpark workers just in a very short amount of time I was there, because there was like attendants and supervisors and people cleaning and ushers and all this stuff. Like, things like it's so completely amazing how different baseball is in a stadium like that, in a town like that, right? Like, if I was a Cubs fan, I would be furious going to those games and seeing every single seat filled like that game was on Saturday, and then not having the team spend money, right? Like, that's where you get to a point where you're like, what the hell is going on here? But man, let me just tell you, I don't know how we can do it, but we need to figure out a way to get, our fan base, our love for this Arizona Diamondbacks team to somewhere to close to that level. That's generations and generations and generations of families rooting for the same team. So it's hard to get there for a team that's just been around since 1998. But man, it was just a different feel. I ended up running into Sarah Spain from ESPN after the game, like literally on the streets outside of Wrigley. At first, she was very annoyed with me, I think, trying to be like, hey, do you remember me from spring training that one time in 2018? How do you not? But we started talking about Wrigley Field, and she said, like, I'm biased, but there's just nothing like this, even in baseball. Like, she's like, maybe the closest thing you get is Fenway, but like the history and the love of the game and the way that like that section of town, that Wrigleyville, just literally turns into baseball nirvana, which we use on the show about Arizona quite a bit. But it was just incredible. And so like, I don't know how we get to the Diamondbacks to that point without years and years and years of passing, but like, it feels like this young core of guys and this team this year is kind of the right direction. Like, Corbin Carroll's mom quote tweeted us about the fans being amazing in that game and the energy of the stadium. And like, that's something that, to be honest, I haven't felt in a very long time. When I start adding the years up, we're talking about over 5 years since the last time I've seen the stadium be like it is during a regular season game lately. So things are shifting in the right direction, but man, it's hard for a baby organization like the Diamondbacks to really be anywhere close to where some of these historic organizations are. A man on the street gave me the bobblehead. There was a bobblehead giveaway that day, and I just brought up to him because I didn't know who these two gentlemen are. It's Boog and JD. I thought it was like Weenie in the Butt, but it's like their announcers, Boog and JD, and it plays a call. And when I talked to this man on the street asking him what the bobblehead was, he just gave me one. It was an absolute magical experience at wow. Wrigley Field, and I don't know if I could ever replicate what happened. I did drink out of a beer bat, like our friend Cody from the CHGO Cubs podcast. TSA confiscated that beer bat on my way back, which I'm still not very happy about. But man, I felt inspired after going to Wrigley Field. And like, I don't know how executives in baseball on baseball teams can't feel that way. Like, we all have to, like, all the National League teams eventually have to take a road trip into Wrigley, or like, especially, or like Fenway or one of those places. Like, how do you not go there and stare at what was going on like on Saturday and not be like, how do we do this? How do we, like, I need to try to make this happen in my city, in my town, I don't know, but there was just a lot of things that made it an incredible experience. I will say, I had a lot of people tell me that Wrigley was like a shithole and like it was like all falling apart and stuff. And I saw zero evidence of that. I saw a pristine, beautiful ballpark that was absolutely being taken care of and was just like spectacular to be at. So I'm sorry, I'll get off my Wrigley Field thing here, but it was just
Derek's gonna talk for another half an hour.
It was religious. But anyway, I guess I didn't let you guys answer the question. But Hazen, I guess we'll just focus on Hazen. Hazen probably should stick around and continue to be in charge of this team, I feel like, for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's hard to say that you should not be rocking with the GM or the owner as long as they are winning, right? And obviously, I think the big kind of thing that could change all of this, as far as the ownership is concerned, is maybe the future of the stadium. Obviously, you saw the Coyotes go through that, where like their stadium future is in question, and then ownership becomes a question. But outside of that, like as long as they are committed, and I'll say, like, it takes time, right? Like the trade deadline is not necessarily the easiest time to make moves. So just because like a trade deadline doesn't go perfectly, I'm not going to say like, oh, we got to burn it all. But we now know that this team is in a place where they look like they're going to start winning games, and you need management and ownership to respond to that in the offseason. And as long as they seem like they're committed to that, then I'd say you rock with them as long as they are.
It's just too easy to expect the trade deadline to instantly fix stuff, because it might not.
Yeah, it really is. I think how Mike Hazen performs at the trade deadline is going to be important. But at this point, it feels like, barring a disaster, Mike Hazen is probably going to get a multi-year extension, and his Diamondbacks tenure will continue for a pretty long time. And yeah, I think he deserves that. If you consider his full body of work here, he has not been perfect. You can definitely point to trades and whatnot that he shouldn't have made. He's been very vocal.
He'd point those out. He would vocalize the ones that he still loses sleep over.
Yeah, he's been pretty upfront about, the Starling Marte trade being a disaster, and the Paul Goldschmidt trade. Even though the D-backs got Emmanuel Rivera out of it eventually, that didn't work out the best. And I think just the optics of that move, he really hates looking back on that, what that did to the franchise from just like a stardom standpoint, not having that guy in your lineup every day. But yeah, on the whole, I think Mike Hazen is really good at what he does. And I think the process that he's using behind his moves seems to be really sound. You have to even that Goldschmidt trade, like Carson Kelly was one of the most highly touted catching prospects in the game. And in his first season with the Diamondbacks, like in 2019, there was a time when that trade looked like a huge win for the D-backs.
Yes.
As crazy as it is to say that. Luke Weaver had a sub-3 ERA. Carson Kelly had like an 850 OPS halfway into that season. And Paul Goldschmidt was not good in his first few months with the St. Louis Cardinals.
Christian Walker was putting up better numbers for a period of time. We were tracking that than Paul Goldschmidt. So for all intents and purposes, that trade looked like a slam dunk, 6 months after it happened.
And ultimately it wasn't. Ultimately it was not. And even then, even though the results were good at that point, it was kind of unprecedented, and it felt like maybe the D-backs were getting a little lucky there, if anything. But there have been some mistakes. I think that's clearly the biggest one. But I think overall, with where this franchise sits right now, where their farm system is, the current roster that they've put together, the big trade that the Diamondbacks made over the offseason, which, the early returns with the Gurriel Moreno trade have certainly been positive. I think Mike Hazen, barring, a disastrous finish to this season, I think he's in a really good spot.
I mean, the Corbin contract extension, the Gurriel Moreno trade, like you said, like, my God, like, how can you not, especially lately, it's kind of been one just win after the next. I mean, the trade for Emmanuel Rivera to send Luke Weaver to the Royals, like, just all of these things that they've done lately have just really been working out. So I agree with you. Well, we got one more question in the mailbag. What else we got? Our friend Greg asks a very important question. Greg wants to know, when do playoff tickets go on sale? Now, I'm going to say September, Greg. I'm going to update you, because as much as I would like to say that maybe by August 27th, the Diamondbacks would be in the driver's seat enough. They play a lot of games against the National League West at the end of the season, and it sucks, but these teams aren't going away, right? You have the Giants, the team that's not even supposed to be good, in second place, breathing down the Diamondbacks' neck. Now you have the Dodgers that still have a lot of pieces that are going to return at some point to make them a very formidable opponent. And the goddamn Padres are still one game below 500, and they're just not going to be that all season long. Like, you can't, there's no way the Padres continue to be a sub 500 team. Maybe they do. I can't envision it. It's much like the Phillies that we saw, where we were like, this is not a sub 500 team. Even though that's their record right now, this is not a sub 500 lineup. Feels the same way about the Padres.
Yeah, I feel like the Giants series coming up next weekend is going to be really big for the Diamondbacks, because that team, much like the Phillies when the D-backs caught them at an unfortunate time last week, it appears they're catching the Giants at an unfortunate time too. Yeah. That team has been on an absolute tear, and we're seeing the playoff picture in the National League change a little bit. The Miami Marlins, somehow, as much as we've talked about their run differential and like how can you possibly maintain this performance, they're doing it somehow. They're still playing really well. The Cincinnati Reds have really come out of the woodworks ever since Elly De La Cruz came up. That looks like an electric young team that might be in position to get better. Yeah, and Matt McClain has been outstanding for them too. So between the Giants, the Marlins, and the Reds, you're seeing some teams really get hot and start making some noise. So the D-backs have to keep their feet on the gas pedal here. Things are getting, there's more teams involved in the NL West. I don't think any team outside of the Rockies can be counted out there. Yeah. And there are some other teams around the NL that are starting to get hot.
Well, and I mean, even when we said like, oh, hey, June isn't that bad, we were taking into account, like they have the Giants, which aren't very good. That's not the case anymore. And similar to when we played the Phillies, like, I don't think we wrote the Phillies series off as like an easy win, but we definitely looked at June and we were more concerned about the bookends of the Braves and the Rays, more so than a lot of the teams in between. Diamondbacks took care of business against the Guardians, but the Guardians haven't been a very good team this season. So I think you're absolutely right when you say that this series with the Giants is going to be pivotal. And if they don't have a good showing, we could talk about this team potentially, seeing their lead dwindle down to like a half a game, so like it's definitely important, and just important, I think, mentally to like you said, keep your foot on the pedal. And speaking of keeping your foot on the pedal, keep your foot on the pedal with all of your road trips this summer, and stop by our friends at Circle K, who have, of course, the best coffee, beer, and snack selection and premium gas. I was disappointed. I took a road trip from Chicago to Minneapolis over the course of this weekend. I didn't see myself on one gas station pump, and I got to tell you, I wasn't thrilled with that. But Circle K, that's the place to go for premium Derrick entertainment. You can also get iced coffee for just $1.89, Red Bulls 3 for $8, Monsters 3 for $6, and so much more. Make sure you're not missing out on all this great stuff. Right now, text PHNX to 31310 to join their SMS subscriber club and get a buy one, get one free offer on 32-ounce Polar Pops. Head to circlek.com/store-locator to find Circle K's near you. While you're at Circle K, get yourself some beer. Make sure to check out our friends at Four Peaks, that you can get your beer there or anywhere you get your beer. You can also check at them out at the baseball games, at D-backs games. They're the official craft beer of the Arizona Diamondbacks. And, of course, they have their Four Peaks draft room at Chase Field, which is a wonderful place to drink, eat, and enjoy baseball from on the suite level. So make sure to check that out. Also, check out our D-backs takeovers. We are going to be meeting up at the Four Peaks draft room. So check out the events page in our show notes to find dates and tickets on our next one. And we will be having so much fun with that. Also, let's do it for the teachers. School's almost back in session, as terrible as it sounds, me bringing that up on June 19th. But my daughter goes back to school at the end of July, and so do most of these teachers. So let's do everything we can to show them love and thank a teacher. You can go to fourpeaksforteachers.org and complete the form to nominate a teacher for several prizes, including 11 $1,000 cash grants and one lucky teacher winning a Teacher's Lounge renovation provided by Four Peaks. Last day to nominate teachers is on June 30th. So do not wait. Get out there and do that now. If you are a teacher, go ahead and check out the 8th Street Pub, because they are hooking you up. Teachers Tuesdays are back. Every Tuesday through July, bring a valid teacher ID and receive $4 pints of Kilt Lifter, Wow, Hazy, and Hop Knot. And again, go to fourpeaksforteachers.org to nominate, donate, or reserve your kit for teachers. Check out at Four Peaks Brew or at Four Peaks Pub to keep up with the latest. Arizona's hometown brewery. Must be 21 or older to drink Four Peaks, and please drink responsibly. Boys, I appreciate you holding things down for me while I was out on Friday. We thank you guys, of course, for being here and for loving the Arizona Diamondbacks. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at Cap_Caveman with a K. Jesse is at Jesse N. Friedman. Shawn is at Shawn_DePaz. Our producer, Damon, is Damon Dog with a DAWG at the end. A little, you got to do that part. You can't follow him without doing the bark. Our show is at PHNX_Dbacks, but of course, all roads lead to at PHNX_sports on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We appreciate your time so much, and we thank you guys for stopping by. We'll see you tomorrow. We're going to be doing our post-game show tomorrow, so make sure to stop by post-game. Wild, weird wild week, including 3 with the Brewers, 1 with the Nationals, and then they start that series with the Giants. So keep it locked right here. Go ahead. What?
Can I add one Brandon Pfaadt nugget here before we go?
Absolutely not. The time for Brandon Pfaadt nuggets were early. That was segment 2, Jesse. That was early.
Well, we're going to take a hard left turn here. So I'm looking back at the StatCast numbers of Brandon Pfaadt's start yesterday. So he gave up 3 home runs. We said that earlier. One of them, 102 off the bat, expected batting average of 1,000. So not a particularly, I guess that one went 400. That one went 431 feet, which I don't think it would go.
XBA of 1,000. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was.
Would ding in every ballpark.
That was sort of a no doubt home run, although I don't think it would have gone really that far in other ballparks. But his other 2 home runs that he allowed, one of them was 101.5 XBA of 190. So that was a cheap shot home run. And then the other home run, 92.5 exit velo with an XBA of 090. So that was about as cheap of a home run as you can possibly have. So yeah, all that to say, the Brandon Pfaadt start yesterday, I do think was a lot better than it probably looked from a box score standpoint.
Sure.
So, I don't think it's necessarily like you got to get Brandon Pfaadt up right away. But you always have to take those numbers with a grain of salt, and that's some pretty important information.
Well, that you can follow Brandon Pfaadt on Twitter to keep up with his stuff as well, by the way. So make sure to do that. But of course, we once again thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate your time. On behalf of Jesse, Damon, Shawn, and myself, we thank you for joining us. And remember, kids, baseball is fun, but it's so much more fun when you send Josh Rojas down to work on his slurve.